a very special episode of Deena and Javen at the Regent Street. It's episode 4. Javen, who would have thought episode 4 would have to be socially distanced? How's quarantine?
It's insane. I just can't believe that this is happening, but it's good to see you from here, and I'm glad that we are doing our show regardless.
Yes, there will always be a way, thanks to modern technology. I had never used Zoom until this recording. So how is quarantine for you? Have you found your stride? Is it a struggle? Does it ebb and flow? What's been going on?
I think it ebbs and flows for me. Because I definitely don't feel like I've found a stride. Like I get, I have my routine because I have to teach my classes. I teach my classes over the computer, and I still go to my meetings that I used to have at the school, and they're just on the computer. So I do feel like there is a bit of a routine during the week, but it feels so different.
I feel very disconnected and very untethered. So I'm going on week 6 since I've been at my TV station, and it's so weird to be working from home. How does a TV host work from home? We're trying to figure out how to film around our house or maybe outside, but making sure, we're following social distancing rules, and, it's a time to get creative for sure, but I feel like what just happened to my life? It feels like it's all at a standstill. It's all gone. The things that were bringing, joy into my life every day, going to my station, going out on shoots. And it's like, I understand it's temporary. I'm grateful to have a cozy home, food in my fridge, Netflix at my disposal. But man, it is really something to figure out the disrupted routine. I really learned how much I'd come to rely on my routine and how much I loved, going to work and having that.
Absolutely. And you talked about creativity, and at where I work, I'm over all the arts. And so, we've been talking about, how do we get creative with this technology and teach these, classes like acting and dance and visual arts and music. How do you teach these classes over this technology? And at first, I was trying to be very optimistic, but I'm telling you, over time, it starts to wear you down.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to be a self-starter every day, to set a whole new schedule for yourself, and then to come up with a million different ideas and then base them through some kind of an online streaming when you've never done that before, day in and day out. I have to imagine it's exhausting.
Yeah, it's insane.
Not to mention, we can't see anybody. And we can't, we're just, it's so weird what you learn during quarantine. I feel like what happens is things really become illuminated. Things that, maybe you felt before are really magnified. And right now I am missing my friends. I want to hug you all. I'm missing physical touch. It's crazy. This is such a surreal time. There's times for me where I feel like, okay, I've settled in. I'm in the stage of acceptance. I've found my stride. And then the next morning I wake up and I'm like ready to pull my hair out. Can't take another day of it.
Yeah. And you and we both share a child with an ex-spouse. And that is interesting. Tell us about that.
Well, okay, so first of all, I had just gotten, settled in Charlie's schedule of going to preschool. And I was now a working mom for coming up on a year this June. Whereas before I had always been home with him. So now we're in this whole new routine where he has his thing, I've got my thing, and now it's all from home. Work from home and wrangle a 4-year-old while you're doing it. Thank goodness I have the help of my parents during the day. And Charlie's a good kid. He really is. But man, it's hard to juggle all of that. The going back and forth between him and his dad has been okay, thank goodness. But you know what? I've actually gotten a little nervous at times thinking about if our state goes on a really big lockdown, what happens to kids, and especially little kids in that situation? Do we then have to decide what parent he locks down with if he can no longer go back and forth? So far, so good, knock on wood. But yeah, I don't know if things are, were to change in our state or with the virus, what could potentially happen.
Yeah, so with so you have a young child, and the one that I'm sharing is she just turned 19, Rain, and so she's home from college. That she's doing all of her classes online, but she goes back and forth between the houses, every week. And so, the weeks that she's here, it's nice to have that other person here quarantining with me, everything. In the weeks like this week where she's gone, it's like, it's so quiet all the time. And that quiet gets, it's so funny because when they were young and we were all here together, the quiet was something that I totally, like I thirsted for it, and every moment I could have some quiet was something that I just loved, the solitude. And now that it's like I don't have a choice, it's disconcerting to me.
100%. Isn't that so interesting? I feel like I'm somebody who really values my alone time. I'm good on my own. I like to be alone. And now that I have an overwhelming amount of it, I'm like, all right, I need people. I would like to have a partner helping me out with all of this one day. I mean, things have become very clear to me in quarantine. I know what you mean though about just having somebody else with you during this time. The time when Charlie is here, I love it. I love it so much more than the every other weekend when he's gone. I feel like I don't want the break. I'd rather him be here. And you know what another big factor has been and why I feel like this are the earthquakes. Okay, I'm not scared of that much. I've realized over the course of my life, bring it on. I'm not scared. You know what, though? I realized I am scared of one thing, and that is freaking earthquakes. So now, if it's a weekend where he's gone, I'm nervous. I can't even fall asleep easily at the moment because I'm so scared of the earthquakes.
Yeah, I have not been as they haven't rattled me as much. Pardon the pun. Um, in fact, the first one I was, like I thought somebody was shaking me awake in the morning, and I just turned around and I'm like, what is going on? And then when I realized what was happening, I was just kind of like, I just kind of laid there like, oh well, And then the ones that came this week, where I am, I barely felt them, but you felt them.
I did. And I tried to adopt your attitude a little bit more. And we didn't have, any of those aftershocks for like a month. So I got to a really good place. And I was trying to take that attitude, it's okay, and calm and cool as a cucumber. And then we had the two aftershocks this week, and I went right back to having that earthquake PTSD. And I did feel them, but not even, as much as people in Magna or even in Sugar House. It's interesting how we can all be relatively close within, 10-15 minute drive of each other, but depending on where we are, we really feel them or not so much. It's such a strange sensation. I can feel my whole condo going, this way, back and forth. And I've had Charlie with me for the last two, and he has been so brave and so cool. And so I've got to play it cool and tell him this is normal. This is just something the earth does. Isn't that cool? But inside my heart is pounding and I'm just doing a real good acting job. Yeah, they're scary. I'm done with that.
So let's talk about that for a second. Let's talk about, right now, I think one of the problems we're having is just the constant doubling down on fear. I mean, and of course here in Utah where we're having these earthquakes, it's not helping anything at all, because it's making people even more afraid. But man, fear is such a big part of our lives right now. You know, you turn on the television, you listen to the news, or however you listen to it, and it is just all fear, you know, all of it.
Well, how do you feel when you step out to do your essential grocery run and you see everybody in gloves and masks? How does that affect you?
My opinion is, well, my experience maybe is a better way to put it. So I am quarantining. I'm doing the things that we're asked to do. I stay home. I go out in the morning. I go on a run every morning. And then I only go out other than that when I have to go to the grocery store. So I'm doing what, we're asked to do, but I don't put on a mask. And so I get to the grocery store, and then, only about half the people, if even that, are in masks, but it's so funny because I see the people in the masks, and my feeling is that they're the ones that there's a problem with. That's the person I want to avoid, like I feel like, I understand, logically, of course, that's silly, and they're just taking these precautions. They're not breathing on other people. They're not breathing in others. So, that's fine. But my gut is saying, what's wrong with you?
Yeah. Yes, I agree. It's so weird. It's a weird thing in our brain. I think it's because it's something that we have never seen before, and not to the extent that we're seeing it. And we kind of associate that mask with, oh, you're sick, you have germs, you're trying not to spread. When in reality, yes, we should feel okay. They're doing their part to keep us safe. It's just so foreign. It's weird to see how people respond to it, just pushing your cart down the grocery aisle. And I know I've been taking precautions. I'm healthy. I don't have the virus. And I'm, coming down the aisle, and somebody a few feet away, more than 6 feet away, sees just another person coming and jumps out of the way as if I'm the one who's diseased. We're all so wary of each other. But yeah, I think seeing that just out everywhere reminds us too that something is, very wrong at this time in our lives, in the world. And it's just scary. It's just this undercurrent of anxiety whenever we're out and we see that.
Yeah, I when I go on my run every morning, like everyone, when I go early in the morning, which is usually when I go, I hardly run into anyone. I run outside in a canyon, and so I don't run into a lot of people. But there's often somebody who I'll be passing, and they'll kind of move away. And then the other thing that sometimes happens is that there are some people who will like walk off the trail about like 15 feet and then just stand there and wait for me to run by. And I'm like, okay, man, whatever, there's just this, we're wary of each other. Everybody's very standoffish. And of course, again, we understand why, but it's just created this strange time with this very strange energy. And when we sort of cultivate that fear, that's just never healthy. There's not a situation where that's a healthy thing. Just like initial fear is healthy for you to make sure you're in a safe situation. But then when you just keep harrowing that stuff up and letting it grow, that's never good. It's not going to be good for us if we keep that feeling spreading.
It's interesting how there's a lot of talk about the world coming together right now. There's a sense of solidarity. We're all in this alone together. And on one hand, I get that and I feel that, but there's also that palpable fear. And when this first started, I couldn't help but think about being in New York on 9/11. And I was living there at the time. And not to compare what is happening in the world, but it's the only other time in my life that I could relate the feeling of having this. It's palpable, both the fear and the solidarity, and they both exist at the same time.
Yeah. That's so interesting that you bring up New York because even, I was in New York in 2003, I think it was. Now, this is uh, not even as big a deal as either of those things, but it was that moment when the Eastern Seaboard, the power was knocked out, and it was August in Manhattan. And if you've lived in New York, if you've lived in New York in August, I mean, it is brutal, just brutal heat. And you have to have an air conditioner. So nobody in that massive city had air conditioning for all the time that the power was out, for days, right? You can't sleep at night. I would just go on walks at night and just walk this mass. I was living in Midtown at the time, and I would just go walk among the skyscrapers, and it was just it was like a ghost town. It was amazing. But you're right. Even though everybody was in this situation that was, panic-inducing in a lot of ways, I really felt that coming together. But we were able to come together. We weren't quarantining. We weren't social distancing. So we were getting together. People I didn't even know. We were going through the buildings together, going up the stairs, knocking on doors, making sure elderly people who couldn't get out of their houses, who can only use the elevators, which were not in use now, had what they needed, see if they had ice and water and food. And so we were going around doing that when we were a group of people who didn't know each other, you know.
I love that. And I have loved when I have seen the posts people are sharing on social media saying, if you are somebody who finds yourself suddenly without a job, without food, without an essential item such as toilet paper or whatever it is, let me know. There's a community of people who can help and are willing to help. And I have seen a lot of that stepping up, taking care of neighbors, family members, and that's been really beautiful and something that would be amazing to see continued after this. I think there's going to be a lot of, big, profound changes after this in the world and just individually.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, you mentioned 9/11, and there was this like period of time where it really felt like the whole country just kind of came together. It was quite beautiful, but that faded. And so I hope we can come together. I already feel like that there's a lot of there's already, I think, a lot of conflict going on, because what happens is people become pious about their opinion. And you see once you connect piety to anything, dialogue ends, right? So where piety begins, dialogue ends. And you see posts on social media, people being very pious about their quarantining and shaming people who aren't doing it the way that they think they do it. And suddenly everybody is an expert on how to social distance and quarantine and all of that, and acting like everybody has the exact same situation, which of course everybody's families are different. How they can even contain quarantining is so different family to family. But that piety mixed with fear, I think, is one of the most dangerous concoctions that we humans come up with. And I feel that happening.
Yeah, you're so right. People putting a lot of pressure on this time, saying that you better come out with a new skill or, really using your time wisely every day. But I mean, the truth of it is just what you said. Everybody has a different situation within the walls of their own home, taking into account what they need to do to get through work, working from home now, or maybe they've lost a job. Maybe they have kids they also need to start homeschooling. I mean, there's so much to each person's situation that is in some kind of an upheaval right now. I mean, there's really no one size fits all for how to isolate and how to quarantine. Some days you just need to get through however that is, whether it's a day where you're on the couch with Netflix, so be it. It's just one day at a time. Most of us have never lived through a pandemic before.
Yeah, I was thinking about that whole, what you accomplished during this time. It annoys me, to be honest. I don't mean to be. I feel like I'm being very critical and cynical. But so the whole. I don't know if you saw that thing going around where it was saying that Shakespeare wrote King Lear during a play. So what are you going to do? And like I shouldn't say that annoys me. That doesn't annoy me. I mean, I had a friend say something like that to me because he knows I love Shakespeare, and that didn't annoy me at all. But and then there was a reaction to that I thought was just as silly, and that was, no, all you should do during this time is survive. That's it. Just cope and survive. I think both of those views, I don't agree with either of them. Like, first of all, Shakespeare was a playwright. He would have written King Lear whether there was a plague or not, because that's what he did. And by the way, the year that he wrote King Lear, and we don't know if it happened when the plague was happening or if the plague happened right before it. We don't know exactly the timing of that, because we don't know exactly when he wrote it. But and when you read King Lear, there are certain allusions to plague time and stuff, but it's certainly not what the play is about. And my point is that he would have written it anyway. That year, he wrote Macbeth, Lear, and Antony and Cleopatra in the space of 1 year, because that's what he did. He's a playwright. And so it didn't matter if there was a plague or not. He was doing what he does. And that's how I think. You should do what you do, and we're trying to. We're trying to do what we do, and we're trying to do our best with it, with the social distancing thing. But I don't think that you should either feel like you have to write King Lear during this. I think you should, as you said, do your best to keep moving forward. That's what I think. But I think you should never, in any circumstance, hunker down and cower away and just sit there and survive, right? Because that's anti-human, right? Human beings, what we do is, when we're faced with something, we push and we keep moving, we keep going, no matter how little it is. It might just be a tiny bit, and we're all going to waste a lot of time during this, including myself. I'm not preaching any sort of schedule or anything, but I don't think either of those extremes are healthy. I think that each day you got to do what you can.
I love it. And I think that it's a mix. Once again, you can find where you fall on the spectrum of survival and creating your magnum opus. And it can be wherever it's going to be. And it's going to vary day to day. And yeah, I mean, when it's a day where you're feeling creative and you can work on your stuff, are you going to be influenced by the pandemic and how you're responding to it? Maybe. But yeah, if you're a writer, you're going to write. And how will what's going on influence? I guess we'll see. Only time will tell. It's going to be so interesting to go back to theater after this too and see what it feels like. Like, what will it feel like the first time we're performing after all of this, after nobody has been able to gather, theaters have been shut down for who knows how long, Broadway's shut down. What will it be like? What will an audience be like? Will they be socially distanced? Will it feel like performing to an empty house? Will there be a certain kind of energy? Of course, but what will that be? It's so weird to think about.
I think about this every day. It's funny. We were talking about Shakespeare, and in my play, The Kingsmen, there's this scene where there's Queen Elizabeth has died, and King James is coming down from Scotland to take the throne. And during that time, the theaters were closed down. Other things were closed down as well, because they didn't want people gathering together, because people tend to riot when they get together. So they didn't want that happening. So the theaters were shut down. So Shakespeare's just waiting. He's just waiting, for to do what he does again. And I'm telling you, like, that feeling is, going through that, actually, where as a theater maker and the theaters are shut down. We've already had one show canceled. Likely our next show is also going to be postponed. I get antsy, and I can't wait to get back to rehearsal, to have the actors come together and to be working with them and to create something again and to do what we do and to have our audience come in and laugh or cry or whatever it might be. That is powerful, powerful stuff. And you take it for granted when you're just doing it constantly, which I am. I mean, between the school and Sting and Honey, it's just constant show to show. But then for it to just stop is so disconcerting and hard. I can't wait to get back to rehearsal, and I can't wait to work with my fellow theater makers in this community again. It's made me very much appreciate the other theater makers in this community.
Yes, absolutely. I think too that this is one of the examples of really illuminating what's important. I think if we let it, we can really come out of this time with a new sense of what we're going to prioritize, a new gratitude for the things that were just part of our daily lives. And I think that's going to be one of the really beautiful things to happen. I do feel like the community theater or the theater community is so supportive of each other right now because we're all dying for it. We all feel sad for each other, for canceled shows, for artists who have no income, for, all of us just not knowing what's coming next. But let's talk about the Sting and Honey season and what did get canceled. It was Black comedy. Tell me what that was like, sitting down with your cast and figuring out when to make the call, and then Eccles shutting down, and how that all came to be.
Well, I'll tell you, it was rough. When Black comedy got canceled, it wasn't like it is right now. I mean, everything has changed so quickly over the weeks. I feel like things are very different from last week. When we had to cancel Black comedy, nobody was sure that, nobody was quarantining. It wasn't anything like that. And yet, and so it was all so vague as to why are we really doing this, and we were just about to open. Black comedy was just about to open, and it was going very well. Like, we had just had this rehearsal where, this is what happens is that, I'm sitting there watching rehearsals and I'm like, this is going to be a complete and utter disaster. and then what happens is that one hits, that run through hits, and I'm like, there it is, and that had happened. Like, Black comedy had just sort of, and it was funny, and the rhythm was right, and the characters were just about there, and we were just getting to that place where, okay, when we're ready for an audience. And I was so excited. And Michelle from the Eccles, she called me while I was at rehearsal. She just wanted to give me a heads up, so they're running the show. I walk out into the hallway and talk to her, and she just kind of gives me this heads up that, like, it's going to shut down, and you're going to have to postpone the play. And so I went back in and I watched them for a little bit more because I was trying to think of, how to address it in the best way. And so finally I just stopped the run through and pulled everyone together, and we just talked about it. And these are intelligent, sensitive adults, and they understood, but you could really feel the heartbreak. You could really feel are we sure? Because again, it wasn't like it is now. We weren't sure. We didn't know for sure what was going on. And it was just it was difficult. It was heartbreaking. And I'm just at home. Every once in a while I have to run over to the school and grab something for my classes that I don't have here, and there's nobody there. I go in and I walk into the black box, and the black comedy set is still just sitting there, and it just, it just breaks my heart. I walk in and there it is. The set is there.
I can feel that throughout my whole body. I just deflated. That's such a bummer. It's so depressing. Even though, you're going to reschedule it, but to get that far in the process, to have that rehearsal where you're like, yes, this is it. Now we're all excited, home stretch. Guess what? Canceled. And it has been so different from one week to the next. And even now, where it feels like there might be some light at the end of the tunnel. This is going to be over, maybe even sooner rather than later. Things will start to reopen slowly but surely, but we still have no known answers. I mean, even thinking about what comes for Sting and Honey in May, or what's going to happen in the summer. And nobody has made the final, no one can give us that final word today or even next week if it's happening. So it's hard to know what to plan for, what to prepare for mentally, emotionally, even literally. Do I start memorizing?
Yeah, that's so tricky, and with our show that opens at the end of May, which I'm sure we're going to have to end up postponing too. That's not an announcement. It's just, that's my feeling, is that that's what's going to happen. That's because there's the show which opens the end of May, and maybe they'll let us do that, because right now the Eccles is supposed to open mid-May, and so a week later we would go in and tech the show. But the question is can you rehearse people for the 6 weeks before that, right? Can you do that? And I don't know if you can, and that's the tricky thing. So the postponement of it may be about rehearsal and not even the actual scheduled opening. So that remains to be seen. Everything is just up in the air. Everything is an unknown. And I feel like that, there's the camps that we see, these sort of entrenched camps, you have these crazy, well, I shouldn't say that, but crazy people who are like protesting in front of a hospital, which doesn't make any sense to me. And then you have people who are like, no, don't ever walk out of your house again, and go into your room and shut the door and shut the blinds and just stay there forever. So you have these, and that's what we see. But the reality is that most people aren't like that. Most people are just people using their brains, and they realize that, yeah, we need to stay inside until we have more information on testing and da-da-da-da. So we need to do the social distancing thing. But we have to figure out a solution here, because we're literally not built to do this. And we have an entire, our own human autonomy depends on our ability to create our value. And that is, we go out every day and that's what we do. We create value, and that is human and beautiful. And we can't go very long without doing that.
Do you also feel a pressure, or maybe not even a pressure, but just you're aware of setting an example to be socially responsible out in the world with this? Like, even talking about how we were going to film this episode. I mean, we obviously can't be at the Regent Street in our black box theater to shoot this. We would have to be, 6 feet apart somewhere. We can't go to see our shows and then sit down and chat about shows, because that's not happening. And it's like, how do you kind of present yourself when you're in the public in some way? How do you function in the world? And, what's the message you want to give? Do you feel like there is a little bit more pressure to be setting that example, a little more socially responsible or aware? Or do you feel like, like I said, we've never been through something like this before. So at what point do you say, I know I'm healthy, you're healthy, let's just sit down and film this? I mean, I think we'd get such a backlash if we did that, right?
Yeah, I think we would. And that was ultimately why we decided not to do that, right? It's yeah, like those people who know me know that I am not a what's the good word for it? Citizenship is not my forte, as it were, right? Like I don't feel like a big I want to go out and be a good citizen every day. It's not that I want to go out and rob banks or anything like that. It's just that that's not something that I don't. I feel like that there are a lot of problems with that kind of thinking. If you read some Thoreau, maybe that's the way to explain it. But you're right. I teach young people throughout the day. I run a theater company, and so I think I have to be smart about the battles, right? Um, I don't know. I don't. That's what you just said. There, everybody is such an expert all of a sudden, and one of the great freeing things is to say, you know what, I don't know. I am a thinking person. I can see the logic behind quarantining and social distancing, and so I'm doing that. But I can also see the very important need for very wise testing and ubiquitous testing, and I can see that that we're going to have a mixture of people going back out and people staying in, and that's probably going to be how we start to do this, because we don't know how long we're going to do it, but it's going to have to change at some point. Um, but I do feel that pressure, and I think most people do. There was that funny. I think I sent it to you, Deena. I saw this tweet, which was actually, somebody sent it to me, a picture of the tweet, um, that said, I saw Goody Proctor without a mask at Safeway. And I thought that was so hilarious, because there is that feeling of wagging the finger, and you're just like, "Ooh, okay, I think most people are being smart. Most people, don't want to spread the disease to somebody else and don't want to get it. And I think most people are being smart within their circumstance. They know their circumstance. And I think for the most part, we can trust people. Um, it's when we get entrenched in this piety and we start grouping together in that entrenchment, that kind of mob thinking is where things go awry. That's where you have people start protesting in front of a hospital, and that's where you have people who create the shame squad. You know.
Some days I find it really comforting that nobody knows what they're doing and nobody has the answer. And I'm like, okay. And other days, that's what freaks me out the most. So, like we said, it ebbs and flows, and there's just nothing to report or announce or decide at the moment. It's just, day by day. I'm glad we're still doing this episode, even though when we started our show, never would we have imagined that episode 4 would be, as you called it, Deena and Javen in a bunker, talking about a virus, talking about a pandemic, rather than sitting down with a guest, talking about what we're currently rehearsing or what shows we're seeing. I have a surprise for you. So if, life was normal right now, we would be at the Eccles watching Frozen.
I just realized I was on mute. That's amazing. That's amazing. We would be seeing Frozen at the Eccles.
I was so excited for that. For those of you who don't know or maybe remember us alluding to Elsa in like episode 1, it's Javen's spirit animal. Elsa is Javen.
Yes. Elsa is me. The story behind that is very simple. Back when the first Frozen came out, my kids were much younger, and I often joked with my kids that, like, someday, Dad is just going to be done, and he's just going to start walking north into the ice and snow, and that's going to happen someday. And this was just kind of a common joke that that I would say to them, and it just kind of became a family thing. And we saw Frozen together, and we walked out of the theater, and both of them, River and Rain, they both were like, "Dad, you're Elsa. You're Elsa."
It's my favorite. It is just my favorite thing ever. And now I cannot watch Frozen or see Elsa without associating you with Elsa. She is, yeah, she's your spirit animal. And I love that so much. It feels so right. At first, I'm like, what? How? But yeah, it's true. It's absolutely true. And I look forward to the day when Eccles reschedules and we can go and see it. We've got to sit like front and center, and then you're going to have to do a meet and greet after.
Absolutely. Whoever's playing Elsa, I will be taking lots of selfies with her. Yeah, I love it. I love that she pretends to want to be alone. That's very much me. Doesn't really want to be alone. She pretends to want to be alone. She has ice powers. That's so me. I have ice powers. Everyone knows that. She's attracted to women. Me. She's just me.
I have ice powers. Everybody knows that. I want you to put that on your business card so bad.
Okay.
Well,
so
what do you think? You had a great idea for how we should kind of wrap up our social distancing episode, which I love, and that was to share something beautiful.
Yeah, and I do feel like our conversation today has been a little bit darker. Not dark. It's just been, we're talking about it. It's a difficult time, and so I think it's worthwhile for us to share something that lifts our spirits, makes us feel good.
Yes, for sure. And I think that this is kind of expected that we would address what's going on, address the virus and the isolation and how it's affecting us, how it's affecting this show, what we do. I mean, we can't not talk about it because that's the reason why we're doing the show this way, why we're not able to see anything or be performing. And so it was definitely going to be a heavier episode, and the coronavirus heavy episode. And I don't know, I mean, we'll just see how things go. We'll see how we adjust for next month and the coming months. And what I like too is just being able to sit and chat and let people get to know us even more. This was definitely a little more of a personal episode with how it's affecting us being at home and with work and with kids. And I like that. I like just being real and, telling people, letting them see that little peek into our lives and telling it like it is. But yeah, I love that we also incorporated a little theater talk and leaving, with beautiful words. Okay, who's going to go first?
You go first. I have to find mine because I forgot we were doing this.
Okay, I'll give a little setup for mine. So I recently finished the book Untamed by Glennon Doyle. If you have not read this, get it immediately, whether you download it on Audible or order it or something. This should be required reading for all humans. I'm serious. It is so powerful. It's so good. It's one of those things that while you're reading or listening to it, you are reminding yourself to really check in and see what's true for you as far as your beliefs, either the beliefs you've grown up with, that you have been told is acceptable or true for you from society, from your family, or just the stories that you have told yourself. It's always important to check in every couple of years and see if that still fits. And it's one of those things too, that as you're reading it, you're feeling your heart and your mind expand as you're really digging deep, and it's just beautiful. So Untamed by Glennon Doyle, there's a section, she's really good friends with Elizabeth Gilbert, and there's a section where she talks about how they first became friends, and Elizabeth Gilbert sent her an email with this poem. I don't know who the author is, but we're going to post these. We're going to release the episode, and then we're going to post what we each read today, so you'll be able to go back and hear this again or steal it. So beautiful. It says, "I honor your gods. I drink at your well. I bring an undefended heart to our meeting place. I have no cherished outcomes. I will not negotiate by withholding, and I am not subject to disappointment." I love it. Just having no expectations, giving of yourself freely, knowing, not knowing what you're going to get in return. And I think that's so beautifully applied to any kind of relationship, friendship, romantic, you name it. I loved it.
Yeah, that is so beautiful and so difficult. Like those things that are in that poem are so difficult to do. I think you and I have talked about a lot of those things, and that is some real heavy stuff. Trying to do that, it was beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. Okay, so mine might seem a little bit dated already, because it's a little Eastery, actually. So Easter was lovely for me, to a point. It was lovely because River and Rain were here. River's girlfriend was with him, and Tara was here. We were all just here together. And we had a lovely meal together. We spent the day, and it was really nice, but I was not feeling very sort of Eastery. I thought that what I would do is read something that feels Eastery and also is also Shakespeare-y, because that's also where my head has been. So this is, some of you may know that Shakespeare's grave has a curse on it, and it's certainly not written by Shakespeare. It's sort of a corny little pirate's curse, kind of thing. Curse be ye who moves you these bones, or something like that. And of course, I love pirates and everything, so I'm happy it's there. And Shakespeare loved pirates, so it's appropriate. But Anne Hathaway's grave, his wife, has one of the most beautiful inscriptions ever. And we don't think. Scholars say that it may have been written by John Hall on behalf of Susanna Shakespeare, Susanna Hall, his wife, but we don't have any evidence of that, and I have no reason to believe that it couldn't have been written by Susanna herself or his other daughter, Judith. But anyway, that's a big setup, and here is the inscription on Anne Hathaway Shakespeare's grave. Breasts, O mother, milk and life thou didst give. Woe is me, for how great a boon shall I give stones? How much rather would I pray that the good angel should move the stone, so that, like Christ's body, thine image might come forth. But my prayers are unavailing. Come quickly, Christ, that my mother, though shut within this tomb, may rise again and reach the stars.
Full body chills, especially that last line. I'd never heard that. That is so beautiful.
Yeah, I love it so much. I love it. Feels very Shakespeare to me. It feels very, what it reminds me of is Hermione coming back at the end of The Winter's Tale.
Oh, so beautiful. Our first show in 2012.
Yeah.
All right, beautiful words to end episode 4, Deena and Javen in a bunker. Definitely an interesting show for many reasons. We're zooming, we're not high-fiving, we're not seeing shows, we're figuring it out. And thanks for sticking with us and watching, everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much. We love doing this. I love doing this with Deena. So thank you.
We do. We love it so much. So we're going to keep going no matter what that looks like. We'll figure it out. And yeah, let us know your ideas, how you are all doing and coping. And yeah, we'll keep it going. We're not going anywhere. Follow us on Instagram, follow us on Facebook. If you have any questions, suggestions, all of that, we're open to it. We love to hear from you guys.
Thanks, everybody. We will see you next month.
Bye.